Hi, I'm Juliet. Ever since I can remember, my dad was cheating on my mom. You might ask, why didn't my mom leave him? The reason was that she had turned her back on her family to marry my dad, and her father had told her she wasn't even allowed to come home for his funeral. My mom's family opposed the marriage because my dad was from a much lower social and financial class. But my poor mom, out of love for my dad, was willing to step over everything and start a life of love, but after she got pregnant with me, things changed and my dad started seeing other women. There were lots of fights about this at first. My dad would listen for a couple of months, but then my mom would find new evidence of his cheating. This turned her into a depressed woman. The house was silent except for the walls echoing, and I grew up in a cold, lifeless environment until I met Max, my husband, at university. After 2 years, we got married and our daughter Nora was born. Days passed and Nora turned 3. I decided to put her in kindergarten to strengthen her social skills. My life was full of love and I thought I was the happiest woman in the world, but then a storm shattered my life. A few days ago, due to renovations, Nora's kindergarten was closed. Let me tell you, Nora is extremely mischievous and playful. I was in the kitchen cooking when I heard her crying. I went into her bedroom and found her on the floor with her hand bleeding. I ran, kneeled beside her, took her in my arms and brought her to the bathroom. Her crying wouldn't stop. As I was washing her hand, I said, "Why are you so naughty? Can't you be quiet and calm for just 2 minutes?" I paused and looked at her beautiful face and said, "You're just like your dad." Hearing Max's voice saying, "Hey, what did you say?" I let out a short scream of fear and looked at the door in terror. He was looking at me with mischievous eyes. I let out the breath I was holding, bracing myself for an outburst, when Max said, "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue?" My breathing had quickened, and I was sure I had turned red with anger. Nora, who had strangely stopped crying, put her hand under the tap and splashed water on my face as she laughed. I gave her a sidelong glance as Max laughed and took Nora from me. He went to Nora's room, threw her in the air, and asked, "How's Daddy's girl? Did you bother Mommy again?" Nora smiled sweetly and her laughter filled the room. I washed my hands and came out, giving a faint smile to my happiness. At that time, I didn't know what disasters were going to befall this happiness and laughter. Max asked, "So, what's for lunch?" Feeling mischievous, I raised an eyebrow and said, "Lunch?" He jokingly replied, "Who needs lunch after seeing their daughter?" I feigned annoyance and left the room. I heard his astonished voice from the room, "Juliet, are you serious?" Jokingly, I said, "No lunch?" He protested, "Juliet." Without saying anything, I went to prepare lunch and called him. He said, "I thought you said there was no lunch?" I replied, "Do you want me to take it away?" He quickly sat at the table and started eating. I first served Nora her food. Max said, "My mom has invited us over tonight, she just got back from a trip." I said, "Okay." In the evening, we got ready and headed to Max's mom's house. I had an odd sense of unease and didn't know why. When we arrived, the serious tone of his mother during greetings and her cold, lifeless face doubled my anxiety. As we were sitting, his mom said, "Juliet dear, can you come to the kitchen for a moment?" I stood up and said, "Of course." In the kitchen, his mother asked, "Juliet, are you happy with Max?" Surprised, I said, "Why wouldn't I be?" She asked impatiently, "Are you happy?" I said, "Yes, I'm happy with my life, with Max, with everything." It was as if I had triggered something, and she threw herself into my arms and cried. I didn't understand what had happened to make her so restless, but I tried to calm her down. I rubbed her back gently, and after a few minutes, she pulled away and looked at me with teary eyes. I wiped her tears and asked, "What's wrong? What do you want to tell me?" She shed a few more tears and said, "I'm a mother, and I have a feeling that something is going to happen. I'm afraid that what your father did to your mother, my son might do to you." She kept dabbing at her eyes. I assured her, "Your worries are unfounded. I assure you on Max's behalf, he's not like that. Just then, Max entered, and his mother. Couldn't say anything more. Max asked, "What's wrong?" "Mom, why are you crying?" She quickly wiped her tears and said, "It's nothing, go sit down, I'll be there soon." Worried, I asked, "Are you sure?" She replied, "Yes, go ahead." I looked at Max, and we both left the room. Max asked, "What happened?" I said, "I don't know. Suddenly, I saw your mom start crying. Maybe there's something she doesn't want us to know." I'd never seen her cry like that. After dinner, Max dropped us home and left to handle some problem. I had put Nora to bed and was sitting in front of the TV waiting for Max when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole but saw no one. When I opened the door, I found a small package. I picked it up, looked around, but there was no one. I went inside and looked at the package, which had no sender's name. It must be for Max. But could I resist my curiosity? I put it on the counter and began to read the writing on it, "To Juliet Stone," so it was for me. I opened it and saw several photos inside. I dumped them out and started to tear up. I spread the photos out, one by one, looking at each. Max with a girl. I couldn't see the girl's face, but Max. I couldn't believe Max could. I turned the photos over, tears rolling down my cheeks. I leaned on the counter, head in my hands, unable to control my tears. I murmured, maybe she's his student. Someone answered, "Would a teacher go to a coffee shop to teach music to a student? Maybe it's photoshopped." The same voice responded, "But what if it's not? Oh God, I'm going crazy. What if my thoughts are right?" Not even 24 hours had passed since Max's mom's words turned out to be true. She had sensed something. Nausea, headache, different emotions, all of it made me run to the bathroom and throw up everything I'd eaten. The memories were overwhelming, childhood memories. I remembered the day my dad left us, when I said to my mom, "Mom," and she replied, "Yes." I lay down beside her and put my head on her lap. I asked, "Mom, when is Dad coming back?" I saw my mother's clenched fists, but I mercilessly continued, "Where is Dad? He's not coming back." She put my head on the floor and left. Remembering the past and what had just happened, I covered my mouth to muffle my sobs so Nora wouldn't hear. I couldn't believe my fate was like my mother's. Still, I shouldn't judge yet. Maybe Max has an explanation. But what if he denies it and covers up the situation? What if someone is trying to ruin our life? I would definitely be giving them a chance by acting this way. What if these photos really are true? I composed myself, washed my hands and face. My breath was heavy. I came out of the bathroom and the doorbell rang. I told myself I wouldn't open the door if no one was there. I couldn't take it anymore. I looked through the peephole. It was Max. Seeing him, my feelings had changed because of the photos. I quickly picked up the photos, put them in the envelope, and ran to our bedroom to hide the envelope among the clothes in the drawer. I ran and opened the door. Max, surprised, took off his shoes and asked, "What's wrong? You're panting. Who chased you?" I said, "I didn't hear the doorbell, come in." As he walked in, confused, he said, "That wasn't an answer to my question." I pushed him inside and asked, "Do you want some tea?" "Yeah, please make one," he replied. Quickly, I made tea to escape his questions. He called, "Juliet." I sighed. Even now, when he called my name, my heart wouldn't stay calm. "But, Juliet," I said, "Yes?" From the kitchen, loud enough for him to hear, I said, "What is it, dear? Have you seen my checkered beige underwear?" I thought for a moment and said, "Last time, it was hanging over the wardrobe." "Over the wardrobe? Did you put it there?" I tried not to get upset because when I did, not only did I give everything away, but my tongue was very sharp and hurtful. I said, "No, I remember you put it there this morning, and I said I wasn't going to pick it up." "Oh, now I remember." A few minutes later, he came and asked, "Is the tea ready?" How selfish. Was he always this selfish? A voice inside me screamed, "Don't judge too quickly." "Yes, Max," I said, "dear." "Are the music lessons you give private or public?" "I have 3 private classes and 2 public ones." "Why?" he replied. I placed the tea in front of him and was about to leave the kitchen when he asked, "Is something wrong? You've been acting strange today. Your eyes are red too, have you been crying?" Panicked, I said no, explaining that my eyes were red because I was chopping onions to fry and freeze. He said, "Oh," and I told him I was going to bed before Max could say anything else. I went into our room, crawled under the red and black quilt, and pulled it over my head. My tears slowly started flowing. I kept thinking, what if the photos are real? What if they're not? I needed more proof to be sure, but this doubt was burning me up. Hearing the sound of the football commentator, I knew Max wouldn't be coming to bed anytime soon. I cried until I gradually fell asleep. Those 3 days were tough. Every night before Max went to sleep, I would go to bed. I didn't want him to talk to me or touch me. I worked hard to make sure Max didn't realize something was wrong, but he would find out sooner or later. That day was really bad. Nora was at kindergarten, and Max had classes. The text message I had received was driving me crazy. I read it for the 1,000th time. "Hello, little lady. Did you receive the photos? Did you like them? I know you trust him so much that you can't believe it. If you want to see for yourself, go to Donut Cafe at 10 a.m. when your husband's class starts. It's so small and visible that you can see it from across the street. Hope you don't faint in the middle of the crowd." I was wrestling with myself. Should I go? Should I not? What should I do? Is it true? Or is it a trap? A trap for what? For whom? I left my phone on the table in front of the couch and ran my hands through my hair. Should I tell his mother? Wouldn't that ruin her image of her son? I screamed silently and stood up. If I sat any longer, I would go crazy from my thoughts. I got up, made myself hot cocoa, turned on the TV, and turned up the volume. A movie might distract me a bit, but Max's face and that girl kept haunting me. I was tormenting myself, wishing it was all a misunderstanding. Then, startled by the sound of my phone, I nearly jumped. It was a text message. "You made a mistake not going. Your cheating husband is coming back. Wait for me, have a good life." The message left me in turmoil, unsure of what to do next. He had also put a mocking emoji next to it. I wanted to scream. Who was this person tormenting my life? I tried calling the number several times, but it was always off. And each time, the text came from a different number. The doorbell brought me back to reality. It was him. I opened the door. He smiled at me, and I scanned around him. "Where's Nora?" I asked hesitantly. "Did you forget to bring her?" He slapped his forehead and said, "Oh, I'll go get her right now," and hurried down the stairs. Could he really have forgotten his daughter? Was he that distracted by that girl? I closed the door and slumped against it. Maybe I should have told his mother. Or maybe I should have waited longer. The sound of my phone made me jump up and rush to it. There was a voice message on Telegram. I opened it. "What do you want to eat, darling?" "Whatever you're having." "Max, stop teasing me." Max's laughter followed. "Do you want a Nescafe, my love?" And I also want cake. 2 Nescafes and a cake, please." "Max, when are you going to tell your family?" "I will, my love, I will. My sister's a bit sick, and my parents are dealing with that. Once she gets better, I'll definitely discuss it with my family." The voice note ended there. My phone dropped from my hand and went under the couch. I collapsed on the floor. Had Max really gone that far? Tears streamed down my face. I stifled my sobs with my hands, crying so much that I passed out. I groaned and opened my eyes. "You finally woke up, my dear?" I looked around. we were in our room, and Max's mother was sitting by me. "Mom, are you okay?" I felt sick at the word dear. I tried to swallow my tears and explain some of what had happened. "I'm fine, Mom. These past few days, some things happened that..." The door opened, and Max entered. He put a tray on the table next to the bed and said, "You scared me to death. Are you feeling better, my love? How many others have you called my love?" I asked. "I'm fine. This soup is made by my mom. Eat it to get stronger." I turned to his mother and said, "Thank you, I didn't mean to trouble you." She took my hand and said, "That's no way to talk." She turned to Max and said, "Are you leaving us alone, son?" Max said, "Okay," and left the room. "What did you want to tell me?" "Well, ever since that day we came to your house, bad things have been happening. I don't know what to do, I'm just eating myself up inside." His mother looked worried and asked, "Did you see something about Max?" I gave a faint smile at her maternal instinct, not knowing how to tell her without shattering her image of her only son. With great difficulty, I slowly explained that I had been set up for an appointment to find out the truth. I calmed her down with a lot of talk and agreed to everything she said. Once I felt a bit better, I sent her home and tried to stay as far away from Max as possible. He didn't bother me much and just watched his football. I kept myself busy with Nora to get those sounds and images out of my mind, but every time I looked into Nora's green eyes, I was reminded of him more. I sighed and put Nora to bed. I went outside and told Max I was going to sleep. He asked, "You've been going to bed early for a few days. Is something up?" Startled, I said, "No, why should there be anything up?" He looked suspicious but said nothing. I went to the couch and discreetly retrieved my phone from under it with my foot. I took it and went to the room. There was a message, "I'm giving you one last chance, tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Ava Music Academy. See your cheating husband there. This is your last chance. Be careful." Right at the moment when Juliet, our story's heroine, finds herself in a crucial and defining situation, we want to know your opinion. Should Juliet continue to fight her enemies, or should she seek a way for reconciliation and peace? This decision will have a significant impact on Juliet's fate and our story. Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Write what you think Juliet should do and why. Your input will help shape the story and guide us in writing the next parts. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to show your support by liking and sharing it. Every like and comment you leave is motivation for us to write more and more exciting stories. Last chance? Should I go? Should I not? Mom said to go, so I must go. I firmly placed my phone under the bed and crawled under the covers, trying to sleep, but those pictures, those images wouldn't let me. Tomorrow came. I adjusted the large sunglasses on my eyes and looked at myself in the mirror. They covered my entire face. I glanced at the door of the music academy and saw a girl standing there. I parked across the street and hid behind the trees, watching her. It was the same girl from the photos. She was making a call, and a few moments later, Max came down the academy stairs. I clenched my bag tightly. He greeted the girl and pointed to his car. She smiled and they both walked towards the car, with Max opening the door for her. My nails dug into my palm. As the car started moving, I came to my senses, got into a taxi, and took out my phone, ready to snap pictures of my husband with another woman. They stopped in front of a cafe. I quickly paid the driver and got out. They sat at a table near the window, clearly visible from the street. I took several photos, my hand trembling. I couldn't believe Max could be such a person. I wanted to confront him and demand he stop his disgraceful behavior. After they left the cafe after 12, I didn't care where they were going or what they were doing. You said to confront him in person, right? I thought. Could Max really be guilty? I called Max's mother and explained everything to her. Honestly, Mom, Her crying voice echoed in my ear. I knew it would end like this, Juliet. Do you want a divorce? I'll get it for you, just don't cut ties with us. Nora is my only grandchild. I replied, Mom, please calm down. I don't want to cut ties, I just want a divorce. This stress and fear of losing face is unbearable. Come to our house, Juliet dear, and bring Nora's things too, my dear. Come stay with me until we file for divorce, we'll tell your mother together. I said, okay, I'm on my way. That's good, dear. It's a good thing we gave you the right to divorce, otherwise, you'd still be suffering. I always knew that boy would mess up his life. After hanging up, I thought to myself, now I'm going to be a divorcee like my mother. Without any discussion with Max, I filed for divorce and didn't let him see me or Nora until the court date. With the help of my mother-in-law, we told my mother. I can't even describe how much she cried over my fate. On the day of the court, I was nervously tapping my foot, observing people who had come for their disputes, when a man beside me asked, "What's your problem?" Surprised, I turned to the man sitting next to me and said, "Yes? Why are you here at the court?" My hands clenched into fists, recalling those photos and the recorded voice, still tormenting despite repeated reminders. Sorry, I think I was being nosy. I looked at the man's ordinary face, smiled, and said, my husband and I couldn't reach an agreement. How about you? We also couldn't get along despite years of marriage, his actions were unbearable. I waited for him to continue. After a year of marriage and understanding my temperament, his actions infuriated me, especially what he's done recently. His face reddened, his beard a bit too long, which I attributed to the stress of the court. I asked, "May I know your last name?" He gave a sweet smile, his dimples showing. "I'm Baker, Steve Baker." "And you?" I returned the smile and was about to answer when my mother-in-law interrupted. "Juliet dear, it's our turn." "Coming, Mom," I said, embarrassedly glancing at Mr. Baker. "Sorry, my mother-in-law is calling me." "It was nice meeting you." He looked surprised. "Your mother-in-law?" I laughed and said, "Yes, goodbye," and hurried towards the door my mother-in-law was heading to. I couldn't believe someone finally managed to distract me from the dreadful mood of the past few days. It was strange that even he seemed more hurt than me. If a man is hurt by his wife, he shatters and breaks, but if a woman faces the same, she stands back up with tears. Throughout the hearing, I kept my head down to avoid eye contact with Max. My mother-in-law's stern look gave me some peace. The lawyer presented the final documents, and then it was up to the judge to make the decision. We stepped out of the room, waiting for the judge's verdict. As I walked towards the seats, I ran into Mr. Baker again. He seemed much happier. Approaching me, he asked, "How did your case go?" "Great," I replied. "And yours?" Still waiting for the answer, I said, startled by Max's loud voice. He accused, "You want to divorce me to be with this guy?" "Juliet, if I have a day left in my life, I'll make you pay for this." As the officers grabbed his hands, Max's words were cut off. "Let me go, you bastards. I'm telling you, let go!" he yelled. "He's your ex-husband," someone said. Gripping my hand with stress, I retorted, "His name is still in my ID, he's not my ex yet, are you kidding?" Suddenly, I realized I was speaking to him with no respect and blushed. "I'm really sorry for what he said, and I apologize for him," I said to the man who called me to announce the verdict, as Max threatened, "Juliet, if I ever get my hands on you, I'll ruin your life and take Nora from you." Against my heart's wish, I shakily walked up to him and stood trembling, my voice quivering with anger. "When you were doing all those filthy things, my life was already ruined. Is there a color darker than black?" He angrily retorted, "I didn't do anything, she was just my student, what's wrong with that, Juliet?" I raised my hand and slapped him hard. The face I once loved affectionately was now turned to the left. "Don't you dare say my name with your filthy mouth again," I said, stepping back and collapsing onto the first chair I found. He was so shameless that even with all the evidence, including the voice recordings and photos, he still wouldn't admit it, even with the testimony of a girl I didn't know and had never seen before, who my lawyer had found. Max's mother said, "Juliet dear, let's go inside and see what the judge says." "Come on, dear." She helped me up by the shoulder. Divorce echoed in my ears. I was both happy and sad, happy that Max was no longer in my life or my ID, and sad to bear the stigma of being divorced. With a faint smile, I walked out of the judge's room. My mother-in-law stood beside me and said, "I'm happy for you. You got the custody of the child." I didn't want my grandchild to be raised by someone else. She gave a sad and apologetic smile. "I'm really sorry for what my son did, bringing shame on everyone with his actions." I returned a melancholic smile. "I hope everything gets better. Count on me as your daughter and let me know if there's anything I can do." She took my hand. "Bless you, my dear. Just make sure to get your rights and alimony non-face-to-face, okay? I don't want Max to bother you, especially after the commotion he caused today." I was about to have a heart attack. As the officers restrained his hands, Max was cut off mid-sentence. "Let me go, damn it! Let me go," he yelled. "He's your ex-husband," someone noted. I clenched my hand with stress and retorted, "His name is still in my ID, how is he my ex yet?" Wishful thinking. Suddenly realizing I was disrespecting him, I blushed. "I'm truly sorry for his words, and I apologize on his behalf," I said to the man who called me for the verdict, as Max threatened, "Juliet, if I get my hands on you, I'll make your life miserable and take Nora from you." Contrary to my heart's desire, I walked unsteadily towards him, stood trembling in front of him, and said with a voice quivering with rage, "My life turned dark when you were doing those filthy things. Is there a color darker than black?" In anger, he said, "I did nothing wrong. She was just my student. What's the crime in that, Juliet?" I raised my hand and slapped him hard. The face I once adored turned to the side. "That's the last time you roll my name in your dirty mouth," I said, moving away from him and collapsing onto the nearest seat. He was so audacious that despite all the evidence, including voices and photos, he still denied everything, even with the testimony of a girl I didn't know and had never seen, whom my lawyer had found. Max's mother said, "Juliet dear, let's go inside and see the judge's decision." "Coming, Mom," I said, embarrassedly glancing back at Mr. Baker. "Sorry, my mother-in-law is calling me." "Nice meeting you." Surprised, he asked, "Your mother-in-law?" I laughed, "Yes, goodbye," and hurried towards the room my mother-in-law was heading to. I was amazed that someone finally managed to distract me from the terrible mood of the past few days. Even he seemed more hurt than me. If a man is hurt by his wife, he shatters, but if a woman faces the same, she stands up with tears. Throughout the session, I kept my head down to avoid eye contact with Max. My mother-in-law's stern gaze gave me solace. The lawyer presented the final documents, and then we awaited the judge's verdict. We exited the courtroom, waiting for the judge's decision. As I approached the seats, I encountered Mr. Baker again. He seemed much happier. Approaching me, he asked, "How did your case go?" "Great," I replied. "And yours?" Still waiting for the answer, I said, jolted by Max's loud voice. He accused, "You want to divorce me to be with this guy? Juliet, if I have a day left in my life, I'll make you pay for this." His hands were restrained by the officers, cutting off his words. "Let me go, you bastards. I'm telling you, let go!" he exclaimed. "He's your ex-husband," someone said. With stress, I clenched my hand and said, "His name is still in my ID, he's not my ex yet." "You wish." Suddenly, I realized I was speaking disrespectfully to him and blushed. "I'm really sorry for his words, and I apologize on his behalf," I said to the gentleman calling me for the verdict. Max threatened, "Juliet, if I ever get my hands on you, I'll ruin your life and take Nora from you." Against my heart's desire, I walked unsteadily towards him, stood trembling in front of him, and said with a voice quivering with anger, "My life was already ruined when you were doing those filthy things. Is there a color darker than black?" He angrily retorted, "I didn't do anything. She was just my student." "What's wrong with that, Juliet?" I raised my hand and slapped him hard. The face I once loved was now turned aside. "That's the last time you roll my name in your dirty mouth," I said, stepping back and collapsing onto the first chair I found. He was so brazen that despite all the evidence, including the recordings and photos, he still wouldn't admit it, even with the testimony of a girl I didn't know and had never seen before, whom my lawyer had found. Max's mother said, "Juliet, dear, let's go inside and see what the judge says." "I'm coming, Mom," I said, embarrassedly glancing at Mr. Baker. "Sorry, my mother-in-law is calling me." "It was nice meeting you." Surprised, he said, "Your mother-in-law?" I laughed, "Yes, goodbye," and without waiting for his response. As the officers held Max back, he shouted, "Let me go, damn it. Let me go!" He stated he was my ex-husband. Clenching my hand in stress, I retorted, "His name is still in my ID, how can he be my ex yet?" I realized I was speaking disrespectfully and blushed, apologizing for his behavior. Just then, I was called for the verdict, and Max threatened, "Juliet, if I get my hands on you, I'll ruin your life and take Nora from you." Despite my inner reluctance, I walked up to him shakily, stood before him trembling, and said with a voice shaking with rage, "My life turned dark when you were doing those filthy things. Can there be a color darker than black?" He angrily denied any wrongdoing, claiming the girl was just his student. I slapped him hard. The face I once adored was now turned aside. "Don't you dare mention my name again," I warned him, moving away and collapsing onto a nearby seat. He was so audacious that he denied everything despite all the evidence and testimonies, even from a girl I didn't know, whom my lawyer had found. Max's mother said, "Juliet, let's go inside to hear the judge's decision." "Coming, Mom," I said, glancing apologetically at Mr. Baker. "Sorry, my mother-in-law is calling." "It was nice meeting you." Surprised, he said, "Your mother-in-law?" I laughed, "Yes, goodbye," and hurried to the room where my mother-in-law was heading. I was relieved that someone else could fill the void in Max's life, ensuring he wouldn't dwell on memories that could anger him. 2 years after my divorce, I was busy with Nora and my job, and the past events had somewhat faded until one day, my phone rang. "Hello? Hello, Mrs. Miller?" "Speaking. Who is this?" "I was wondering if we could meet somewhere to talk about something." "Do I know you?" "I know you, but you don't remember me." "We need to meet in person, it can't be discussed over the phone." His voice sounded familiar. "Where should we meet?" "Donut Cafe." "The same place where I saw Max with that girl?" "Let's meet at 5 p.m. tomorrow," he said, and we hung up. Who could it be? His voice seemed so familiar. I dressed appropriately and left Nora with a daycare teacher. At the cafe, only a woman was sitting inside. She looked familiar and waved at me as I entered. She had a sweet face but seemed lifeless and pale. We greeted each other, and I asked her to introduce herself. She was surprised I didn't recognize her. "I'm the girl you saw with Max. I'm his wife." I was puzzled about how she found me. "Why are you here? Does Max know?" I thought, why is she looking for me? How did she find me? She reassured me that Max didn't know. "What do you want?" She replied, "Juliet, I understand your reaction. Let me start from the beginning, about those photos." She revealed that she met Max a few years ago, a charming and smiling man, her music teacher. Despite her infatuation, it turned out he wasn't the man she thought. She accepted his birthday invitation without question, only to find herself alone with him, where he forced himself on her against her will. As she broke down, I comforted her, thankful the cafe was quiet. I asked her name, gave her a tissue, and listened as she shared her story, revealing herself as Hannah. After calming down, she continued, I had completely ended my relationship with him when I found out I was pregnant. My brother insisted that Max should marry me quickly, but I didn't want to marry a man who couldn't control himself. A few months later, Max came to propose, and I knew my brother had pressured him. Everything happened quickly. We got married. When my daughter was born, Max softened a bit. Despite his initial coldness towards me, she paused. "So, what does this have to do with me?" I asked. Ignoring my question, she said, "I later discovered that Max had a wife and child before me. Initially, I was angry that he pursued me despite having a family, but I didn't confront him. I was curious to know how he got divorced. When I investigated, I found out that my brother had been sending you all the evidence to make you divorce Max." She started crying again and then added with sobs, "Juliet, Max and my brother." I was angry, but seeing the deception by Max and the plight of this poor girl, my heart went out to her, and I comforted her. I was glad to be rid of Max, a man of such lustful desires. I headed to pick up Nora. On the way, I thought a lot and knew I should be happy, but I wasn't. I picked up Nora and we went home. I reminded myself that I am a source of peace. I fought with life for Nora. If I endured all those events, it was only for Nora. Now, 7 months have passed since I met Max's wife. I am in touch with Max's mother, who told me Max became paralyzed from the waist down in an accident and is living with that woman. His wife has left him, and their daughter, unfortunately, passed away. Max is waiting to see me in person to ask for forgiveness, saying he has paid for the betrayal he committed against me. But I have no desire to see him again and have forgotten all about the past. Recently, the director of the daycare proposed on behalf of her brother, and they are waiting for my answer. Jimmy is a decent and respectable man. Like me, he was married once before and is now divorced. He told me that he is just looking for peace now and thinks that we could tie our lives together. I'm still thinking about it. Maybe I'll accept, maybe not. It all depends on what fate has in store for me. With firm steps and eyes reflecting a resolute determination, Juliet moved towards an uncertain future. Having wrestled with numerous challenges and hardships, she finally found the peace she had always sought. Gazing steadfastly at the distant horizon, Juliet took a deep breath and, with a smile gracing her lips, embarked on a new chapter of her life. Now that Juliet's story has come to an end, remember that this is just one of the many exciting stories and films we've shared on our channel. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to check out our other films and narratives. We are always striving to create fresh and captivating stories, inviting you into a world of imagination and excitement. Don't forget to show your support for our channel by liking, commenting, and sharing our films. Each of these actions is invaluable to us and helps us produce better and more engaging content. So keep following us and look forward to more new and thrilling films.